how we are affecting climate change right here and right now. This organization, World System Solutions, is affecting climate change right here, right now, in this moment. We are positively, constructively affecting climate change. Now, there are traditional definitions of what would be required to transform our world, to heal our world, to solve pollution, increased temperatures in the world, the rising of the seas, so to speak. We would suggest that those are all chopping at the branches rather than at the roots of the issue. We would suggest that if we don't change ourselves, choose proactively rather than reactively to change ourselves, to be able to work and live in this world harmonious with the world, harmoniously with each other, in a healthy, sustainable way. If we don't change within ourselves, all of the changes that we try to make outside of ourselves in terms of toxifying adaptive technologies that have created this situation in part to begin with, as far as we understand it. If we just try to fix what's in a very obscured and unconscious way, all of the seeming problems and symptoms, we'll be chasing fires to put out endlessly for the next few hundred years, potentially. And that's not an intelligent, wise, discerning, sustainable, constructive, effective, and efficient approach. And if we did that, we would also likely utilize what resources we have left only in putting out the fires and affecting the symptoms rather than solving the core illness, this disunity, this competitiveness, this feeding tendency, this predatory tendency that we've operated from as a species, and that we have has led us to look at our natural environment as the enemy to be subjugated, conquered, or destroyed, and has also motivated us to look at each other as the enemy to be conquered or subjugated or used or fed upon or destroyed. There is no longer room for fear or passion-driven motivations and choices. These types of strategies cannot be our map or our guide into a sustainable future. We are, as a WSS organization, right now, helping everyone who is listening to understand that they have not fully, as of yet, understood, and that we must understand now collectively if we are to survive as a species. So if people ask us, what are we doing that is tangible, substantive, meaningful, affecting in the world, we would suggest that these conversations are more powerful than any technology that's ever going to be developed by any human being to resolve climate change issues. Because if we change our hearts, if we change our minds, if we change our way of thinking, if we change our way of defining and developing solutions, so that every solution we create in the world is a sustainable solution. The plastic bottle was a non-sustainable solution to people needing portable water. Now there are literally trillions of these bottles spread across the world, and we're creating more and more every day at an escalating rate. That is a profound metaphor for our toxic, capitalistic, monetization of solutions creation that is killing us, killing our world, potentially killing the future for our children. And every time we drink from a bottle of water, we make that choice. Am I choosing to pollute the world for my own present moment convenience? Or am I going to make a more wise and long-term, sustainable, discerning choice? Yes or no? That choice needs to be made in regard to every single decision that we make for the rest of our lives as individuals and as a species and as nations. It's got to be that granular, that definitive, that clear, that constructive, that positive, that healthy a shift if we want to bring about the requisite collective, mobilized, unified solutions generation process that we need as a species and that the ecosystem needs from us as a species. So, to all listeners now and in the future, for others who might listen to these recordings, we would ask, do you care enough to help yourselves to change your own behaviors in this moment for the better, for your common good, your future good, the future good of the world, the future good of the planet, the future good of your children? If so, this means taking substantive action now and forever forward. That is a change in mindset. That is an arrival at conscious, discerning understanding. That is effecting wisdom in all of your choices. That is not an easy process. That is likely to cause some degree of stress on your system. We get that. We suggest be gentle with yourselves. Be patient with yourselves. Make a change a day. You can make one change in the way you make a decision about how you carry on in your life every single day. If you just do that, just make one change in how you make a decision and not try to make more than that in a day, you'll be able to manage the associated change, stress, change, shock, or transformational resistance that all human beings have, that have been which the dynamics of which have kept us from moving the needle. We would suggest that this process of simply making a change a day is one of the most powerful things that humanity can do to change the trajectory and course of our future as a species, to save our planet, to rescue the animals and the plants and the natural world from our own unconscious decision making. This is an option and an opportunity that is available to every person in the world today. If this message were to go out on the wire, so to speak, to YouTube, onto the internet, to other climate change activists, this change in mindset, this change in decision-making process, this bringing to consciousness the dynamic of our empowered free will choice. Yes, true. So if we choose to do that, then we will empower ourselves, we'll empower each other, and we'll do so in a way that's manageable, that a change that can be accomplished in a healthy, constructive way without stressing ourselves out, without being worried or anxious, without being afraid, because we'll know every single day we have made a constructive shift in our lives. We've changed the world for the better. If you change one grain of sand on the beach, you have changed the history of the world. Our definitions of climate change that we've been discussing, these new and different and more comprehensive and multidimensional definitions of climate change as a symptom of species evolution, as a symptom of our species attaining some degree of consciousness simultaneous to propelling us into higher consciousness. All of climate change, all the challenges we face, if we look at those as our school books, our educational process that is propelling us collectively into higher consciousness and wise understanding, then it's not a negative, it's not a scary thing, it's not a stressor. It's a way to have a discussion about where we go together, about how we get there together, about how we meet everybody's needs equally and fairly for the long term, now and in the future, how we unify as a species. So the WSS mission and vision is designed to achieve that. All of our strategies, our tactics, and our developmental trajectory are defined and redefined in every moment of new understanding. So our organizational process is constantly in a changing, transformational dynamic. Terrifically important for us to do that. If any organization, even any climate change organization, if it becomes very fixed and ossified or amberified or concretized in its way of looking at climate change, it will miss many things, at least, that we're discussing today. It won't take them into account. They won't become part of the recipe. They won't become part of the solution. And therefore, the solutions won't map or fit for the future in a sustainable way. So we see our conversations here, our contemplations, our educational processes as key and core to climate change solution. If we can agree upon that, if we can say, absolutely, what we're doing today is changing the future of the world, is changing the nature of the conversation, is up-leveling the conversation to one of higher consciousness and thus greater empowerment by all who participate in this conversation and these educational dynamics. Then we can suggest that there is a vast change that we can potentially bring when we bring this information together with collaborating climate change organizations and climate-centric institutions. We're developing our educational system and content and its delivery system based upon all the understandings we've discussed thus far today. Our engagement models are being formed and formulated based upon these understandings, not traditional understandings, not traditional organizational process and developmental paths, processes, or paradigms, because traditional modes can't get us ahead of the change curve of our world, ahead of the tribally affected dynamic of feeding on and destroying and toxifying and polluting and overheating our world. We've got to do something that is catalytically transcendent of all of that. We must have the courage and the faith. It is a leap of faith for us to go beyond that which has ever happened or occurred in the past in all of the history of humanity and say, we are on a rescue mission for humanity. We're on a rescue mission for the species, for the ecosystem, for the future, for our future children. This is a rescue mission. There are no blocks. There are no sacred cows in this process. There are no rules that apply that have ever been in place other than unconditional love and care and alignment with spirit and love of humanity and the natural world. We get that it's important to be able to change on a dime, on an instant, immediately, to transform immediately based upon any new information that we derive in our constant learning process as an organization. We must be willing to have that absolute, willful, determined intentionality, that openness and receptivity to always learn, always respond to any new information, to engage anyone and everyone so that we can learn from them, not just deliver information to them, that we can be evolved by these conversations with them, and that they always be conversations. So receptivity, humble receptivity, egoless receptivity, determined receptivity, willful, determined receptivity is vitally important. So our modes of global presencing, how we present to the world, how we engage, how we communicate, how we participate, how we collaborate, how we contribute in every way, are informed by these understandings, as are our programs, our values, and our goals, and how we choose to collaborate and how we choose to learn ever more, moment by moment, to collaborate more effectively, more efficiently, more humbly, with greater love, with greater service, with absolute forgiveness, and without judgment of any kind of anyone, in order to unify humanity and mobilize humanity effectively and efficiently. So how we choose to grow and why and in what directions are constantly being informed by this evolutionary learning and transformational process of the WSS. and by everyone's contributions and participation, and they determine who we focus on collaborating with based upon their definitions of climate change. So if we interact with the climate change organization and they say, well, climate change is only an environmental issue and it can only be solved by innovations in technology, does it make sense that that perspective, although it has purpose, necessity, and place in our world, it's valid? It's not designed as an organization, as an intention, as a collective organizational culture and an approach and a set of strategies to take into account the human factor and the soul process and the psychological factors, the emotional factors, the primal drives of humanity, and the changes in mindset, decision-making, and behavior that must be taken into account if we really intend to bring about the necessary movement of the needle globally that will result in true resolution of climate change. So our organizational focuses are on healing of the rifts between individuals and cultures and organizations, education, conscious collaboration, the teaching, the training, the modeling, the education, the facilitation of all of those as necessary keys to climate change resolution. So we absolutely perceive these to be the bread and butter, or the meat and potatoes, whatever metaphor you would choose, hitting the nail on the head. If we don't approach all of this in a holistic, complete way, we will inadvertently be at loggerheads with ourselves, with our own nature, with our own species, the inertia and momentum of our traditional cultural tendencies, habits, motivations, and ways of solving problems. It's imperative that we do not fight ourselves or each other in the process of developing solutions to climate change. And our whole process is designed and defined to subtract competition, conflict, battle, disagreement, judgmentalness, misunderstanding, confusion, and projection from the conscious collaborative mix. It's imperative that we offer that quality of modeled conscious collaboration, because if we don't do that, we'll end up with what we've got in the United Nations at this time, which is conflict over how to approach climate change, and individual nations having the option of unilaterally, narcissistically perhaps, vetoing absolutely vitally necessary collective actions that would work to solve climate change. This conflict, these discontinuities of approach and intention and value and goals and care must be resolved. There must be a mechanism for their resolution, and there must be then a mechanism for people's energies and capacities and co-creative intentions to work together to create the solutions and to deploy and implement them in a very globally transformational way. That's the social movement engine.